The next morning, Grandma B calls for my threes and then asks, "You getting enough elbow room, B?" It's hard to hear her because Bryce is making a big deal about starting soccer today. He's parading around the living room with his stinky shin guards and pretending there's a ball at his feet that he's kicking through Dodger's legs. "Bryce Valentine, MVP!" I press the phone to my ear and say, "I'm working on it, Grandma." And I'll tell you one thing. What I really want to do is steal Bryce's invisible ball and tell him to cut it out. And I want to tell Grandma that no, I don't have enough elbow room because Bryce Valentine is in my class and on my bus and lives in my house. And if we don't find 2 more girls this morning, he'll be on my soccer team too. And that's not enough elbow room for anyone. "I got this," I tell her. "I know you do, B," she says. Aliana's mom drops us off in the circle outside of school, and we wait on a bench for the buses to pull up. I have the list and a pen in my hand, and I'm ready to write down the names of the first 2 girls who say okay. I'm flipping the pen around through my fingers, and Aliana's swinging her legs and letting her feet scuff the pavement. "How long have you been playing?" she asks. "Forever." "Me too," she says. "My dad taught me how to dribble in the park across from our apartment before I started preschool." She's looking down at her swinging feet. He still lives there, but it's not a park anymore. I don't know if I should say sorry about how her dad's still there, or how the park isn't. "My mom and my Grandma B and Aunt Tam taught me how to play in the yard behind my condo," I tell her. Thinking back makes my heart ache a beat, because now I'm wondering who's sitting on our stools and sleeping in my room, and if they've met Aunt Tam. "But we were always all on the same team," I tell her. I laugh a little, remembering it. We always passed to each other and made our way across the yard to the 2 sweatshirts we threw down for goalposts. No defense, no goalie, just the 4 of us working it up the field together. Same with my dad and me. She says it like a whisper, like maybe her heart might have ached a beat with remembering too. We were like that, on the same team. The first bus pulls up, then another behind that, and kids start streaming off and hurrying toward the double doors of the main entrance. Aliana and I look at each other. "Split up?" she asks, "or double team?" "Double team," I say, and we take off together toward the mob coming off the front bus. The first girl we see is Beth Winters, a 7th grader from another class, and she says she can't play because she works for her grandpa at the country store after school. She walks toward a group of friends from her class, and we follow her. When we ask about soccer, they all say, "No thanks," and walk off. Then we see Emmy, who's number 7 on our list. She tells us Principal Measley came to their class yesterday, too, and there's no way she's playing for the boys' team again. He puts you in for like 3 minutes at the end of the game, if they're winning, and then says things like, "Good effort, men," and I'm like, "Hello?" "That's why we're trying to find 2 more girls," I tell her. She links arms with Aliana and me and steers us in the direction of the next bus pulling up. "I'll come with you." We see Georgia from our class, and then Quinn and Fern and Tess. And before the bell rings, all 11 of us from the list are walking together, some of us linked arm in arm, trying to get 2 more girls to team up with us. Everyone we talk to either already has something they have to do after school, or has never played soccer before and doesn't want to start something new. And when we say, "Not even manager?" they shake their heads. We move from bus to bus, group to group, with no luck. And the bell is ringing for us to get to our homerooms. We stop by the flagpole and huddle up, and some of the girls are starting to talk about whether they're going to show up for the boys' team practice after school today or not. And most everyone is shaking their heads and saying, "Forget it." But then Aliana pushes to the middle and clears her voice. "No, we can't forget it," she says. We deserve a team. Make an announcement in your homerooms. We will too. Keep asking until you've asked every girl twice. That gets everyone saying, yeah, and okay. And I'm thinking that Eliana is already starting to feel like the captain of this team, and that's not how this is supposed to go. So before I even know I'm doing it, I stick my hand to the middle and call for everyone to bring it in. Team on 3, I say. And when I get to 3, 11 voices blend together and raise up for team. We leave the huddle and all start moving toward the middle school wing, and I see Kenny and Morris in the hallway, putting their hands together and mocking team in high, squeaky voices as they walk toward Ms. Blaze and Ms. Kravitz's room. And I want to squash them with a pair of mud-caked cleats, because I had all this good feeling in me, and they ruined it with their stupid little giggles. But Eliana is there, and Quinn and Georgia and Fern and Tess, and with the 6 of us walking down the hall toward homeroom together, the good feeling comes back. A feeling like maybe we can do this, find 2 more, and keep our team. When we get to homeroom, I sit down next to Maximilian, and he passes me his TI-84 calculator. Team? Not yet. He gives me a nervous look. Then, Eliana is raising her hand and asking Ms. Blaze if she can make an announcement. Ms. Blaze says okay, and the class quiets, and Eliana stands up, and I do too, because it's not just her announcement. We need 2 more girls for the soccer team, I say quickly. I look around, and my eyes stop on Maddie and then Laurel, because their names aren't on the list. Yeah, Eliana takes over. Even though we have a full team, Principal Measley says we need a sub and a manager. He thinks we're just going to give up, but we're not. Eliana's on a roll, and she's sounding like a captain again. Like the captain for the U.S. women's national team up there. Like Megan Rapinoe getting everyone pumped to stand up to Measley and tell him that this is all some big, big bullsharky. It would be this school's first ever girls' team, Eliana continues. So you'd be making history. That gets Maddie scooching forward in her seat a little bit. But still, no hands go up. So Eliana leans in and tries to make eye contact. Laurel looks away, and Maddie mouths, sorry. Just think about it, she says, then sits down. You can sign up with me, I say, and wave the list. Maximilian slides his TI-84 back across the table to me. That was good. The bell rings, but we have English first period, so Ms. Blaze starts talking about reading and how she loves going to the library to choose a stack of books and how she tries to really picture the story in her brain as she reads. She holds up a few books she finished over the summer. Then she says that she's going to give us time to read in class every day, whatever we want. Whatever we want? Wyatt calls out. Whatever you want, Ms. Blaze repeats. Mac pulls a Sports Illustrated kids magazine from his backpack and holds it up. Anything? Anything, Ms. Kravitz says. I already read that issue. It's great. You did? She nods, and Ms. Blaze lays out some ground rules. First, we have to be reading something we want to be reading. Second, we have to find a place in the room that helps us focus on our reading. Third, we have to respect other people's reading choices and places. Seriously? Wyatt asks. You're not going to give us a list we have to read or anything? Seriously, Ms. Blaze says. We want you to create your own lists. For a few minutes, it feels like this plan will never work because everyone is super loud, looking for books, moving tables, finding places to stretch out on the floor. But Ms. Blaze isn't trying to shush anyone yet, and she's even adding to the excitement, helping kids pick books they might enjoy from the classroom library bins. Maximilian doesn't like the noise and disorder, though. I can tell because he already has his book. He always has a book, and he's ready to read, and he's starting to shake his head back and forth, like maybe he can sweep all the commotion away. Before I can find the spot between his thumb and pointer finger, or start counting with him by eights, Ms. Kravitz is there, and she's asking if he'd like to come with her outside for just a moment. She doesn't say it like he's in trouble, though. She says it like she's trying to help. He nods and leaves with her. I pull Bridge to Terabithia out of my backpack and look at the cover. There's a big tree and 2 kids on the front. The tree has huge roots and rocks at its base, just like Maximilian's and my climbing tree behind the condo. And if it had a stamped-down path and couple of lower branches to swing up on, it'd look exactly like it. Little by little, the room is getting quieter, and before I flip to the first page, it's silent. Eliana is sitting on a pillow, tucked in the corner of the library space. Mac and Wyatt are reading their magazines on the couch. Kenny is still at his table with a pile of graphic novels stacked next to him. He's looking carefully at each comic frame and turning the pages slowly. Bryce pulls a book from his backpack, and I wonder if he got it from Cameron and Tucker's shelves. He unfolds a camping chair on the floor and opens to the first page. Then the door creaks open and Maximilian comes back in. He sits down and whispers, "I've already read 2 pages with Ms. Kravitz." Then he turns to page 3. I start reading too, and Ms. Kravitz sits down with a camping chair next to Bryce and pulls out an iPad. They have a quick whisper conversation, and she shows him something on the screen and says, "Give it a try." Then she leaves him with the iPad and goes to sit with Fern and Maddie, who have a pile of picture books on the table between them. She motions for them to come with her, and they go into the little office space in the back of the room. I can hear through the door that they're reading aloud in quiet voices. Ms. Blaze finishes checking in with Morris, who's reading the 2nd book in the Percy Jackson series. And then she settles into a spot near the front of the room and pulls out a skinny book called From the Notebooks of Melanin Sun and reads. I read the whole first chapter of Bridge to Terabithia about a boy named Jess Aarons and how quickly he can run and how he wants to be the fastest kid in the 5th grade. He has 4 sisters, and he's trying to sneak out early in the morning without anyone waking up so he can go run across the cowfield, and I don't blame him one bit. In fact, I actually start to really hope he makes it out there, past his sleeping family, just to get a little bit of elbow room. Just as Jess crouches down and takes off to run like the wind, there's a knock at the classroom door. And I'll tell you one thing. That's never happened to me before, where I forgot I was in school because I was running around the cowfield with some character in a book. Principal Measley comes in, and of course he would interrupt right now, because when I look up, I notice I'm not the only one who forgot they were in school for a minute. He looks at Ms. Blaze like, "What on earth is going on in here?" and "Why are you just sitting there and not teaching?" But Ms. Blaze shoots him a look back like, "You don't know a thing about what's going on in here, so you best stop before you start." "A minute," he says, and he doesn't even whisper. Ms. Blaze joins him just outside the classroom, and I can't hear everything they're saying, but I think Principal Measley says, "Just do what you can." And I know I hear Ms. Blaze say something back, but I can't tell what. And then I hear his squeaky footsteps down the hall. I catch eyes with Eliana and Georgia and Quinn and Tess, and I know we're all wondering the same thing. If any of that was about our soccer team. But when she comes back in the room, Ms. Blaze just sits and opens her book again. Ms. Kravitz comes out from the little office room, but Fern and Maddie stay in there, trading picture books. She says in a loud whisper to the whole class, "We're going to read for another 10 minutes. And everyone groans. But it's not a groan like they're so bummed we have to keep reading for 10 more minutes. It's a groan like they can't believe we're only getting 10 more minutes and no one wants to stop. Then she sits down next to me and asks me how I chose my book. I mean to just shrug my shoulders and say I liked the cover. But before I know it, I'm telling her about Cameron and Tucker's Had to Own It shelves, and how Cameron and Tucker are Bryce's brothers, not mine. But we all have to live together because their dad married my mom. I tell her I was just looking at the books on their shelves, and I found this one. And then I tell her that Maximilian taught me how to read in a tree that looks kind of like the one on the cover. Ms. Kravitz nods.
Well, that's as good a way to find a book as any,
She says.
What do you know so far?
She taps the cover of Bridge to Terabithia. I tell her not much, that I know Jess Aarons wants to be the fastest kid in the grade, and that his house is full of too many sisters. And I just read that there's a U-Haul truck moving a family in next to him, too. I'm thinking about Eliana moving in across the road, and wondering if the family in the book will have a kid, too. I bet so. Ms. Kravitz smiles and says,
Great reading. I'll check in with you tomorrow to see if you find out any more.
Class is over, and everyone whines. One more page! And Ms. Blaze says if we borrowed a book from her library, we can take it home with us if we want. There are a couple of little squeals, and everyone's zipping up their backpacks when she calls for our attention.
Also, Principal Measley just informed me that we'll have a new student in our class beginning tomorrow, a 6th grader. She's getting a tour of the school right now and may join us in the afternoon for homeroom just to say hi.
I look at Eliana, and I know she's thinking what I'm thinking. Maybe the new girl plays soccer. We all keep packing our backpacks, but Ms. Blaze claps her hands 3 times.
Listen for 1 minute,
She says.
The new student is coming from a school that doesn't have a class like ours, one with 2 teachers and a group of students who are exceptional and welcoming. She'll be coming with an interpreter, too,
Ms. Blaze says.
because she is deaf and communicates using American Sign Language.
A few kids say, what? Ms. Kravitz explains to us that she was born unable to hear with her ears, and because of that, she learned a different language, one you speak with your hands, one you can see. Cool, says Tess. I feel really stupid for wondering if she can play soccer. I mean, without being able to hear, but that's what I'm wondering when Kenny flutters his hands in front of Morris's face and they both crack up. I'm thinking Ms. Blaze is going to shoot them down, but instead, she looks right at Bryce, who is sitting next to them, and says,
Thank you, Bryce, for not laughing at our new student and her unique abilities.
And I can't believe it. If she had given Bryce 1 more second, he would have laughed right along with them. But instead, she's giving him a compliment and acting like he's such an example. And I can't actually believe that I can't believe it because Bryce Valentine gets away with everything. Ms. Kravitz lines us up for our next class. Eliana is first in line, of course, but I'm right behind her. And Fern comes up behind us and whispers, I talked to Maddie about the team while we were reading, and she can't because she has to pick up her little brothers after school and take care of them until her mom comes home. Bummer, I say. Then, as we're walking down the hall, I see the other classes lined up. And when I find Emmy and Micah at the back of the lines, they both look at me and shake their heads. No luck. We're still at 11 girls. 10.